after staging a coup last week. We have details of these stories and a lot more coming to you in the next 60 minutes. But of course, this is still the extensive coverage of the mid-year budget review that will be heard and championed by the Three Business team. And I'm introducing to you Menuafo to take us away on that.
Hello and welcome to Midday Live. We are watching the business segment and we are heavy on the mid-year budget review as Finance Minister Ken Ofori-Atta is expected to present government's mid-year budget to Parliament today. Sources from the Finance Ministry indicate the government is confident in its ability to maintain economic stability and stimulate growth without the need for a supplementary budget. The review is expected to aim at solidifying economic measures in line with the post-COVID-19 program for economic growth. This is supported by the $3 billion three-year extended credit facility agreement with the IMF. Government's eyes structural reforms outlined in the post-COVID-19 program for economic growth as key in achieving its economic objectives in areas such as reformation of the energy and cocoa sectors, debt management, inflation management, tax policy and administration, expenditure control and arrears clearance, financial stability, governance and corruption. Three Business will be covering the mid-year budget review on TV3, 3FM and on all three Media General platforms. Do stay tuned. Still on the mid-year budget review, the Association of Ghana Industries, AGI, has called on the government to scrap the COVID-19 health recovery levy ahead of the mid-year budget review today. Amidst the World Health Organization's declaration of the pandemic's end, the AGI is questioning the levy's relevance.
The COVID-19 health recovery levy was introduced in March 2021 as a 1% levy on the supply of goods and services in Ghana, as well as on imports. The levy is intended to raise revenue to support the government's COVID-19 response. The levy has been controversial since its introduction. Some businesses and individuals have argued the levy is a regressive tax that disproportionately affects the poor. However, with the announcement by the World Health Organization of an end in the pandemic, many insist the levy has outlived its purpose and must be scrapped.
We still continue to pay COVID-19 fine. We understand why it was introduced and we thought that it has served its purpose. We are at that stage where there's no sunset clause on the COVID-19 fund. It is important that they put timeline on this fund, and our expectations are that they terminate the implementation of these COVID-19 funds.
The Association of Ghana Industries has also called for some reliefs for pad producers in the country.
Manufacturing sandpaper locally is becoming very expensive because of all of these taxes you need to pay on the raw materials. And so we're asking for government to take off all of these levies so that it becomes easier and cheaper to import the raw materials.
With the country's economy in dire straits and government's pressing need for revenue, the question still remains if it will remove levies that appear to be bringing in some income. Michael Obodu for 3 Business.
Well, meanwhile, the Food and Beverages Association of Ghana is calling on government to scrap the Growth and Sustainability Levy Act 2023 in its mid-year budget review. Government, in its quest to increase revenue mobilization, introduced 3 new taxes in the 2023 budget, including the Growth and Sustainability Levy. FABAG says the tax amounts to double taxation and must be repealed.
The sustainability bill that they brought on board, every year, after declaration of profits from each company, we pay taxes. We pay tax on the profit that we make. And we pay taxes on the things that we sell. Beyond this, we pay also 25% of our profit to government. So you're asking me to pay for my tax, my profit tax, and then whatever is left for me to take home, you take another 5% or 2.5% of that money for free. So we really don't get where this is coming from. And I'm surprised Parliament also went ahead to adopt such a policy. So quickly, if it's coming on board, these are the things that we expect that they will take it off the table. They will reverse them and then ensure that companies really have a field day.
In more business stories, Executive Director of the Africa Center for Energy Policy, ACEP, has called on Finance Minister Ken Ofori-Atta to address the inefficiencies within the energy sector during the budget review. Benjamin Boakye has noted the need for coordinated efforts among stakeholders in the energy sector to confront the current power crisis. But before we take this story, let's hand over to my colleague Nanekia Mensah-Abrampa, who is currently in Parliament, and ask her for updates on what's going on. Hello, Nanekia, can you hear me? Good afternoon, Nanekia, can you hear me?
Hello, Manu.
I can hear you now, Nanekia. What's currently the situation in Parliament?
Well, we're coming to you live from Parliament, and I don't know if you can see behind me, sitting just started after hours of waiting. I understand that earlier there was some engagement here in Parliament involving the Speaker as well as the members of Parliament, and one event known as the Citizen Bureau, which I'm sure in our subsequent bulletins, our parliamentary correspondents will be telling us more. So that is why sitting delayed a bit today. It just started and proceedings are ongoing inside the chamber. So in accordance with Section 28 of the Public Financial Management Act 2016, we expect the Finance Minister to present the mid-year budget review today. And the Minister actually just walked in a few minutes ago. If you had joined me earlier on Zoom, I'm sure our cameras could have captured him, but he came in with the Deputy Finance Minister also with his green suitcase, raising it, showing us exactly what he is about to do. So he is in the House as we're speaking, and I'm sure after Parliament proceedings, it will get to his turn to join in the statement. You understand that he's presenting a statement today before the House. And expectations are high for this particular mid-year budget review, especially as this is the first statement or official statement from government after the country secured a $3 billion US IMF facility for the country for a bailout. And so this is the first time we hear an official statement from the Finance Minister, and so I'm sure it will be heavy on that. In terms of the theme, in terms of focus of discussion, we're looking at an update on the implementation of the 2023 budget, which is one, and we expect some insights into what government has done so far. I'm sure there will also be policies implemented to stabilize the economy, to promote growth, and also to provide social protection as stipulated by the IMF and what they have given to us as a country. So it is highly anticipated that government will, or the minister will tell us more on what is going on with our structural reforms in terms of expenditure and commitment, our control and our US clearance. Mind you, the Chamber of Independent Power Producers are really keen on this budget because they're expecting to hear about the debt of $2.3 billion owed, governments owes them, and they have actually threatened power cuts in coming days. So I'm sure they're also anticipating to hear something with regards to the debts that government is owing them in this particular mid-year budget. We should hear something on debt management. We should hear something about the financial stability and generally the growth plan. And in terms of expectations from the business community, as well as economic analysts, they have been heavy on the fact that they don't expect any new taxes. So if that is what is going to happen, I'm sure in some few minutes, we'll hear that from the finance minister. We understand it's a statement. Earlier in a tweet, Information Minister Kojo Oppong-Nkrumah says that this particular budget would bring out lessons to learn, looking at the economic challenges of the country. Exactly what that means, I'm sure this budget will be telling us more. So we will go into the chamber, settle down and get updates. I'm sure subsequently we'll be giving our viewers some more on what to expect from the finance minister, who is already in the chamber to present to us the mid-year budget review.
Thank you very much, Anika. Before we go, what are the general sentiments you are getting from the members of parliament so far?
So because of the engagements they were having earlier, we were not able to interact with the members of parliament, but I'm sure we've heard from the minority side as well as the majority. This morning on our morning program, we heard from them talking about their expectations. They don't expect any new taxes as were stipulated. Some other members of parliament are also looking forward to hear what exactly the government will be putting on board, especially as we are on a bailout program. And I'm sure they will be expecting more also from the education sector. So I'm sure these are the general things for the members of parliament to be talking about. And amongst them, earlier on interactions, I heard from some of the committee, the energy committee. They were heavy on the debts for the IPPs, that is the Chamber of the Independent Power Producers. So they are also looking forward to hear what government has to offer when it comes to the IPPs. And earlier in their conversations for the committee, they were anticipating what to hear from the energy minister. Are we going to have power cuts in coming days as threatened by the IPPs, or government is going to put in some intervention? So the energy sector is key on their table, as well as the no taxes issue that businesses have raised, as well as some economic analysts have also raised. So subsequently, afterwards, we'll be getting some reactions from the members of parliament. I've seen some of the economic analysts also around the world, also getting you some reactions from them on whether or not the mid-year budget really addressed the concerns that they have raised in the past 6 months of the economy.
So we are going back to this one. Very much, Nane. So we'll be crossing over to Parliament from time to time to give you live updates on what's going on and what's the latest in the mid-year budget review. Now let's take our first story, which had the Executive Director of Africa Center for Energy Policy, ACEP, calling on Finance Minister Ken Ofori-Atta to address the inefficiencies within the energy sector during the budget review.
This is electricity sector where we're supposed to sell power and recover revenues, and we have failed to deliver that over a decade. And the program highlights that the entire economy becomes unsustainable if we continue to behave the way we have behaved with the energy sector, where over the years, government has spent in the past 4 years an average of about $1 billion or $1.2 billion every year to cover the shortfalls in the energy sector. And if you look at government's own projections of business as usual scenario, that is if nothing changes or we continue to behave with the energy sector as we have been doing, we will be paying about 23 billion Ghana cedis this year to support the lights to be on. By end 2026, we would have spent about 97 billion Ghana cedis. That is far more than what we have programmed in the same budget to spend on in key socio-economic sectors of the economy.
Now, with just a few days to... Now, today is the day for the presentation of the mid-year budget review, and the Chamber of Petroleum Consumers Ghana is raising a red flag against any move to introduce new taxes on the sector. Now, let's listen to COPEC insisting that such a move could be dire for consumers and further hike inflation.
Prices in Ghana are currently at over 12 Ghana cedis per litre, and economists are projecting that the local currency will remain at double digits throughout the year. This means that fuel prices are likely to remain above 10 Ghana cedis in 2023. The rising cost of fuel is a major concern for consumers in Ghana, and it is only being exacerbated by the ongoing surge in global crude prices. As the mid-year budget review approaches, consumers are worried that the government may introduce policies that will further spike the cost of fuel at the pumps.
We would want to remind government that petrol prices have gone up just this week. You've seen the OMCs inch up on the back of the fact that the local currency is not performing too well. International market prices are expected to also go up in the coming weeks and months. And so to wake up to hear that there are attempts by the finance ministry to want to increase taxes on petroleum, we can only caution that whoever is entertaining any such ideas should shelve them.
Duncan Amoah, the Executive Secretary of the Chamber of Petroleum Consumers Ghana, COPEC, believes that the government must take steps to address the rising cost of fuel if it is truly committed to addressing inflation.
In an economy where inflation is hovering between 40 and 50%, if you go to increase fuel taxes, you are simply increasing baselines and inflation will go way higher because the inflationary basket calculation, petrol prices will form one of the key variables, and so going to increase it, you are indirectly collecting money, but you are just going to collapse your economy further. So we would want to caution that the finance ministry does not come with any additional taxes on petroleum products. As we have said, it could be dire for everybody.
Now we have in our midst Yao Appiah-Lartey, who is a financial advisory partner at Deloitte. Thank you very much for joining us, Mr. Lartey.
You're welcome.
Now, what are your expectations of interventions to reduce the cost of credit?
Okay, so I'm expecting government to empower some of the financial institutions or non-bank financial institutions that support agricultural sector, one of them being GESAL, provide guarantees to farmers to access credits. I think some of the challenges we've had is recording the last inflation that was reported was food inflation, and food inflation is significantly driven by cost of import for farmers. So if farmers have access to credit that is relatively cheaper, it will help bring down food inflation. And so I'm expecting government to introduce policies to empower GESAL. GESAL provides guarantee for financing to the agri sector. Okay. And also the Development Bank of Ghana will have some incentives also supporting farmers or the agri sector as a whole.
Okay. Also, Bank of Ghana continuously increases policy rate to check inflation. In your view as an expert, should that continue?
Yeah, so I think, so it depends on what we are seeking to get. So I think the good news is cost of bills or treasury bill rate is going down. And that is one of the key drivers of credit cost. So if I will give money to governments rather than giving it to the business person, if I see that government is giving me a lower return, I'll give it to a business person. So if cost of credit, as in the cost of government securities, is going down, or price of government securities is going down, then banks are more incentivized to give it to businesses or even the agri sector. So I'm thinking that maybe Bank of Ghana should probably put a hold to the increasing rate, as we are saying, if you want to bring down cost of credit, because that's always a reference rate for the banks. If the banks are seeing the Bank of Ghana or the central bank increasing the rate, then they are likely to increase the cost of credit to third parties. So I'm thinking that at some point, the Bank of Ghana is also addressing some monetary issues or monetary targets, but then they should also look at the other effect, which is likely to be the increasing cost of credits. So if you want to target increasing cost of credits, then at some point, instead of increasing the rate, we put it at a level where it allows banks to also review their rates, and then rates or cost of credit will come down in the long term.
Okay, thank you very, very much. And that's how we wrap up the business segment. You're still watching Midday Live. We'll bring you more news right after the break. Stay with us.
Send them around. Send me a message send a man to me uncle school. Mini pado, Sanguinos made the quiet Biana me one say, but I'm so I'm a ferry.
Now, in order to curtail the flow of a monthly period, some of the girls here use anything from rags, old clothes, toilet papers, even baby diapers, or literally anything that can absorb the flow. She's at the moment experiencing her monthly flow and also wearing a rag to absorb the flow because she cannot afford a pad.
My mom wasn't having money, so I could use napkin during my period, so I could stay home for 1 week.
Beyond the issue of they even have to beg for or have to have a sexual relationship with people to be able to afford it, their right to education is also at stake.
The provision of free sanitary pads for girls in deprived areas of the country is a must.
How do we have luxury taxes on something as basic as a sanitary pad?
It's a cardinal sin.
This is unacceptable.
Period.
My Period is Not a Shame. A documentary by Godwin Asideba airs on Wednesday, August 2 at 9 p.m. on TV3, TV3 Ghana across social media and 3news.com.
When controversies arise, when there is trending news, when the hard talk must be done. My name is AJ Akwaku-Sapon, your TV and radio princess. Consider me the lady with all the juice. If it's trending, I've got you. Join me on The Trend every Friday live on TV3 as we discuss all the trending topics for the week with my in-studio guests. We're very interactive, so follow the conversation on our YouTube channel, get interactive on Twitter, and use the hashtag TheTrendsGH. The Trend, the biggest conversations on social media. Join me and my guests every Friday and share your opinion, your thoughts, and of course, get interactive every Friday live on TV3. The Trend coming soon only on TV3.
When the sun rises, there is hope. While this hope lingers on, the citizens look up to the government, the economy, the national development agenda, and everything in between.
On Ghana Tonight, it's our utmost priority to bring you insightful conversations on the economy, break down the biggest issues while setting the agenda for transformation and national development. The big and important stories are treated from the human interest angle, while the facts and the figures are painted with precision. So now, let's cut the convention and start the conversation here on Ghana Tonight. I am your host, Alfred Okamsi.
Ghana Tonight shows Monday to Friday at 10 p.m. on TV3.
Brought to you by Flamingo Paint. Superior durability, superior hiding, superior coverage, simply superior.
We are at that time of the year, and the much anticipated trade and exhibition fair is here. It's the Western Trade Fair, the August 2023 edition. It will be massive and engaging. Companies, small and medium scale enterprises, join the fair. Let's network and grow our business together. Date Sunday 30th July to Sunday 6th August 2023. Time 8 a.m. to 10 p.m. each day. Venue the Takra Demo. Activities include seminar, live band, gospel show, fashion night, and many more. The general public is invited. Entry and admission is absolutely free. For sponsorship, booking, and inquiries, kindly call or WhatsApp 0245 787 886, 0244 244 027, 0243 438 251. Partner Takrady Mall. The Western Trade Fair is powered by Connect 97.1 FM. Connect Western Trade Fair. Egwedifu Bronya.
I've been watching you from a distance.
It is my pleasure to honor a woman who has opened her doors to hundreds of vulnerable children over the years.
Loves me.
A woman who is a true inspiration, a woman who is a national hero.
I want the best for you as your mother.
A woman by the name of
Mary Clove.
My honor to award you with Community Builder of the Year. I've done everything you've asked. Everything.
I know what it is like to grow up without love. Thank you.
No one
will stand in my way.
Isono shows Mondays to Thursdays at 8 p.m. on TV3.
Brought to you by
MTN Reflex Toothpaste.
Ladies and gentlemen, we're going to demonstrate to you the superior properties of Flamingo paint as compared to other paint brands on the market. We take equal quantities of Flamingo paint and this ordinary paint. We then dilute them with water. And now, let the test begin. The gentleman on the left is going to apply the ordinary paint, and the gentleman on my right will use the Flamingo superior paint. As you can clearly see, Flamingo has the obvious better hiding. Furthermore, Flamingo has painted a much larger area. You know, one bucket of Flamingo paint is equal to several buckets of any other paint brand on the market. Flamingo paint is made with superior formulation to give superior durability, superior hiding, superior coverage. Flamingo paint, simply superior.
Now, in order to curtail the flow of a monthly period, some of the girls here use anything from rags, old clothes, toilet papers, even baby diapers, or literally anything that can absorb the flow. She's at the moment experiencing her monthly flow and also wearing a rag to absorb the flow because she cannot afford a pad.
My mom wasn't having money, so I could use napkin during my period, so I could stay home for 1 week.
Beyond the issue of they even have to beg for or have to have a sexual relationship with people to be able to afford it, their right to education is also at stake.
The provision of free sanitary pads for girls in deprived areas of the country is a must.
How do we have luxury taxes on something as basic as a sanitary pad?
It's a cardinal sin. This is unacceptable.
Period.
My Period is Not a Shame. A documentary by Godwin Asineba airs on Wednesday, August 2 at 9 p.m. on TV3, TV3 Ghana, across social media, and
You're welcome back to Midday Live on TV3. We're live also on all our social media platforms at TV3 Ghana. We're live too on 3news.com. We'll still bring you extensive coverage of the Finance Minister's mid-year budget review. But in the meantime, the leadership of the Colleges of Education Teachers Association has served notice to withdraw their services across the 46 public colleges of education effective Tuesday, August 1, 2023. Now, according to the association, the government has failed to implement their negotiated allowances as ordered by the National Labour Commission. President of CTAG, Prince Obingham, has been speaking at a news conference.
Services due to failure of the government to comply with the National Labour Commission's arbitral award orders. Now, following several efforts by leadership of CTAG to impress on our employer to comply with the arbitral award orders issued by the National Labour Commission, on 2nd May 2023, the National Delegates Conference of CTAG has at its meeting held from Sunday 30th to Monday 31st July 2023, today, resolved that effective Tuesday 1st August 2023, all tutors with emphasis, all tutors of the 46 public colleges of education in Ghana are to withdraw teaching and related services until our employer has complied with all the orders of the NLC. All the orders underlined. Yay. 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 Ladies and gentlemen, the demands of CTAG are as follows. 1, full payment of 7 months arrears of allowances accruing from the approved conditions of service owed members per the NLC's arbitral award order. 2, payment of 1 month's salary to each member of SITAC as compensation for additional duty performed in the year 2022 as ordered by the NLC. 3, publication of the report of the staff audit and subsequent extension of public universities' rate of allowances to deserving members of SITAC per the NLC's arbitral award order. 4, immediate release of leave roster by each college of education to enable each tutor take 15 working days leave for the year 2022 as ordered by the NLC. And then 5, unconditional cancellation of the killer all year-round academic calendar, effective 2023-2024 academic year. Hey, no retreat, no surrender. No retreat, no surrender. We want to serve notice to the government that enough is enough. Yes. We have gone through this suffering for far too long, and we believe that the college teacher deserves better. Sure.
Away from that, after 1 year, 7 months of the Apiati disaster, some victims are yet to be compensated. They claim the police administration is charging each person 90 cedis for police accident report, which has become a big challenge to them. Spokesperson for the Apiati Relief Committee, Daiwo Kwashi Awuja, is appealing for help to have it addressed.
At the 1-year commemoration ceremony of the Apiati disaster on 20th January this year, lawyer for the victims, Nana Obi-Boahene, had urged the police administration to expedite the process of helping the victims get their accident reports to enable them file for their compensations. But 7 months down the lane, the problem still persists as the victims are struggling to pay for the 90 Ghana cedis each charged to assess the report. Spokesperson for the Apiati Relief Committee, Daiwo Kwashi Awuja, says their coffers is now in the zero, which is making it impossible for the committee to assist the over 1,000 victims.
We are still in talks with the police. They have asked us to also take some actions that probably the victims have not taken because they have to pay for the police accident report. Some have, some haven't. The person hasn't got money. So up till now, the police reports, they don't have it. Most of them don't have it. Therefore, the lawyer is unable to proceed. So that is that, until we get that money to pay. If they depend on the committee too, it is another story because the committee doesn't have money to pay, example, 90 Ghana cedis each per 1,036 persons. You can imagine how much we are talking about.
He also disclosed that some victims still need medical care, mentioning one who needs 50,000 Ghana cedis to undergo knee surgery.
The livelihood of the people too is zero. So if organizations and individuals are listening, how they supported from the onset, we still need the support. Because the vulnerable group, i.e. the orphans, widows, the aged, and those who are, as a result of the explosion, are incapacitated, they cannot work and stuff. They are living in serious hunger because food supply ceased ending of February. And from February till now, that is the end of the story. So we need support.
Meanwhile, the deadline for the completion of the phase 1 of the rehabilitation has elapsed without it being completed.
We were expecting that the reconstruction of Apiati was supposed to complete in July, but pattern of rainfall this year, which you are witness to today. If there was any construction work that was supposed to be done today, they wouldn't have been able to do it because of how consistently it rained from morning to evening. So that is part of the problems, apart from maybe other technical problems. But if you have followed construction, a lot of factors goes into it. With what I'm seeing, I'm optimistic that we'll see a very good Apiati very soon. But I call for more support for the reconstruction committee as well, so that the second phase will also kickstart because there's a lot of damage that is still going on there. All the rains of last year rained into the buildings. This year it has continued. If we don't take action quickly, probably it will be a different story.
Moving on to some other subjects this afternoon, the Bank of Ghana's audited financial statement for 2022 indicates that the total liabilities of the central bank and its subsidiaries exceeded its total assets by 54.52 billion cedis as at 31st December 2022. The Bank of Ghana has also posted losses totaling 60.81 billion cedis for the 2022 financial year. My colleague Dennis Puabri-Wedam has studied the report and is joining me with some more details of this report. Dennis, thank you so much for joining us on the program. With a loss of 60 billion cedis, was it that bad? Tell us more about your findings.
Well, it appears to be very bad considering if you want to compare it to what had happened in previous years, especially in 2021, you would notice that the figure is quite worrying. And like you rightly mentioned, so the Bank of Ghana together with subsidiaries, Bank of Ghana, you have the bank itself, and you have, the bank also has interest in other areas. So for instance, they also run the Bank of Ghana Hospital, they run the GIFTS platform, and some other subsidiaries. So together, they recorded a negative equity of 54.52 billion. And that, like I said, if you want to understand it and get a perspective right, you need to compare it to what was made in the previous year, which is 2021. In fact, in 2021, they posted a positive of 5.7 billion in that particular year. Right. So for them to have run into a negative and go down to 54.52 is quite worrying to answer
Close
your
to
answer.
50 billion if you compare that with 2021.
2021, yes. So 2021, they actually made a positive. And in 2022,
that's a negative,
that's
a
eroded
loss.
And even went into a loss, and to go as far as 54.52 billion Ghana cedis. Now, this resulted from the losses during the year, and the year in respect in question here is 2022 of 60.86 billion cedis. Now, to compare that to what happened in 2021, they made the losses were 1.25 billion.
So there was a loss in 2021 too.
But they had enough to offset that loss and still make a profit. That's the difference. Even though there was a loss, this loss was they were able to offset the loss and make a profit in that year. But in what we have now, they haven't been able to cover that. That's why
60 billion is a huge amount of money.
That's why you say that their assets have not been able to cover their liabilities.
Right.
Now, let's get down into the reasons they attributed to this particular loss. Now, they say that the losses were largely because of the debt, the domestic debt exchange program. Remind you, people were crying about haircuts.
Yes.
Now we are told that it's not only individuals who got haircuts. The Bank of Ghana itself got a huge haircut in that particular regard. The other thing too had to do with impairment of some of their assets. They also cite the cases of the depreciation of the currency and then some other factors. Now let's move into a specific.
Some other factors. Did they mention anything related to Russia, Ukraine, COVID-19?
Well, so the overview of the whole report begins by citing the cases of COVID-19, the Russian, Ukraine, and how it has affected the economy largely, slowed down the growth of the economy.
So the inference is that it could be related.
So it flowed from all that.
Okay.
Now getting to this point. And if we go into the specifics here, you understand how some of all those things played out, especially the depreciation of the cedi. So when we look at how much was lost to impairment of Government of Ghana security holdings, now this is where the haircut thing comes in, because the Bank of Ghana apparently was also holding the Government of Ghana bonds. And in that respect, they lost 48.45 billion cedis in that respect. That compares to 0.008 billion in 2021.
So in this loss, it is almost equal to the total loss the Bank of Ghana had, the 60 billion.
Precisely,
this was a huge sum of money.
And this, it's only in respect of their holding in the Government of Ghana securities. Now, there's also another issue of impairment of loans that were advanced to some quasi-government and financial institutions. That is to say, they've given money to some people who haven't paid, or some institutions who have not paid. Now, that amounts to 6.13 billion. That compares to 2021, where that loss was 0.19 billion Ghana cedis. The last one, which is the depreciation of the cedi. This simply means that you have your money, but by virtue of the depreciation of the cedi, you wake up the next morning or the days to come, and that money had depreciated by 5.27 billion. So that's how much cost the Bank of Ghana incurred just by the depreciation of the cedi in 2022. That compares to 1.07 billion in 2021.
But what stands out in the specifics is the domestic debt exchange, the haircut that is suffered. That was about 48 billion.
Yes, I think in the details of the report, they mentioned that account almost half, they lost like half of the investment that went into that particular area.
I see. In the report, I also cited the mention of the board of directors of the Bank of Ghana. What role did they play so far in all of this?
Yes, so for the board of directors and the management together, it is essentially their job to prepare the financial statements that will reflect the position of the company. That external auditors also come and look into. So what the report said was that, I mean, after looking into the books of the Bank of Ghana, it was clear that the Bank of Ghana can continue to run as a going concern. That means that it can still exist in the foreseeable future. And that they're expectant that the economic conditions will get better and that they'll be able to make up for all the losses. And if not, reduce how much losses
they made. But is there some tangible way forwards that, the Bank of Ghana?
Yes, they make some specifics. I mean, at least 2 of them stand out. The fact that they are going to retain profits and that by retaining profits, they are hopeful that it will be able to boost up their financials. And they also say that they are going to desist from financing the budgets. And that in that respect, they've already signed a memorandum of understanding with the Bank of Ghana so that they will no longer finance the budget. That has been a very contentious matter where the opposition has always been on the neck of the Bank of Ghana that they ought not to have been financing the budget. But I think they've now come to a conclusion per that memorandum of understanding that they will no longer finance the budget.
Before you go, Dennis, so there was a mention of, the 6.13 billion cedis as a result of impairment of loans and advances granted to the quasi-government institutions. As part of the way forward for the Bank of Ghana so that they don't find themselves in the situation, do they have plans to stop or reduce how much they give to these?
Yes, simply in that regard, a lot more due diligence, and that's how they intend to tackle it.
Dennis, thank you so much. Dennis Pabrik-Wedam joined us with some updates on the Bank of Ghana report that detailed how the bank lost over 60 billion cedis in 2022. You're watching Media Live on TV3. My name is Noble Crosby, and I'll be back with more stories after the break. Please stay with us.
Ghana coming out again, the same squad. For the ball, he's got it! Throw it down, 10!
Sports Station, Mondays, 9 p.m. on TV3.
Sports Station is brought to you by Betway, Nesta Mouthwash.
Flamingo paint, superior durability, superior hiding, superior coverage, simply superior.
Now, in order to curtail the flow of a monthly period, some of the girls here use anything from rags, old clothes, toilet papers, even baby diapers, or literally anything that can absorb the flow. She's at the moment experiencing her monthly flow and also wearing a rag to absorb the flow because she cannot afford a pad.
My mom wasn't having money, so I could use napkin during my period, so I could stay home for 1 week.
Beyond the issue of they even have to beg for or have to have a sexual relationship with people to be able to afford it, their right to education is also at stake.
The provision of free sanitary pads for girls in deprived areas of the country is a must.
How do we have luxury taxes on something as basic as a sanitary pad?
It's a cardinal sin. This is unacceptable.
Period.
My Period is Not a Shame. A documentary by Godwin Asiniba airs on Wednesday, August 2 at 9 p.m. on TV3. TV3 Ghana across social media and 3news.com.
10 valiant men, all poised to battle for their bragging right.
Old wine is sage, improves as time goes on. The stars have aligned for us in this moment. Our time is now. We did not come to first someone shows. We came with our own. Fresh power, phenomenal strength, new and never seen before.
Who takes the title? Ghana's Strongest, the power to do.
Catch the new season of Ghana's Strongest Sunday at 4 p.m. only on TV3. Ghana's Strongest is powered by Gasem, the nation builder. Brought to you by Mixi Choco, Channel Hot,
Deluxy Acrylic Paint,
Drugnet.
Watch Isono on TV3 Mondays to Thursdays and stand the chance of winning amazing prizes. Now you can win amazing prizes in the Isono Watch and Win competition. Answer an easy question at the end of the episode and text your answer to 0550-052-927. You can win airtime weekly and other amazing prizes like spa treatment and hampers at the end of the month. Catch Isono on TV3 Mondays to Thursdays at 8 p.m. TV3, first in news, best in it.
You're welcome back to Midday Live on TV3. Let's now take you to Parliament, where the Finance Minister is beginning his budget statement.
2016, Act 921 and Regulation 24 of the Public Financial Management Regulation, LI 2378. I respectfully, Mr. Speaker, request that the entire 2023 Mid-Year Fiscal Policy Review document is captured in the Hansard. Mr. Speaker, 8 months ago, I presented a 2023 budget statement and economic policy of the government in Kabom budget. At the time, the economy was going through a very difficult period amidst unprecedented global turbulence. This was within the context of major external shocks coupled with domestic vulnerabilities triggered by credit rating downgrades, tightened domestic financing conditions, and increased costs of borrowing, with the cost of shipping a container increasing sevenfold in the 18 months following March 2020. Just about every country in the world grappled with soaring prices from 2021. Our country, like many others globally, experienced unusually sharp increases in food, fertilizer, and fuel prices, rising inflation, and exchange rate depreciation, leading to severe economic challenges and hardships for our people. A headline in the December 2022 edition of The Economist captured the global situation in these words, quote, 2022 has been a year of brutal inflation. Mr. Speaker, it is no exaggeration to say we cannot find another period in our history where so many different headwinds hit our economy at the same time with unrelenting speed and scale. Thankfully, as the members are beginning to show, and as many honorable members of the House have indicated to me in our engagements, we have together as a nation turned the corner. Turned the corner, Mr. Speaker. We have avoided the unimaginable, but what could have been so easily possible under different leadership circumstances. With a lot of effort, we have managed to avoid empty shop shelves for medicines and other essentials. We have seen no shortage of food. We have been spared the frustrating specter of long queues for fuel at our filling stations. And we have managed, in spite of all the challenges, to keep the lights on. Indeed, as the psalmist said in Psalm 118:23, this is the Lord's doing, and it is marvelous in our eyes. This turning the corner is underpinned by the investments and sacrifices we have collectively made during the difficult period since March 2020. Mr. Speaker, it is important that we acknowledge some of the major milestones that this country has experienced in the last 3 years. We should, quote, be still and appreciate that despite our challenges as a country, we have been saved from many extreme conditions that others have suffered, including peace, health, security, continuous supply of power, and life itself indeed. Over the period, the country has gone through extremely difficult circumstances, and the gratitude of His Excellency the President and his government goes to the good people of Ghana for their patience, understanding, and positive contributions to government efforts to weather the storms. During the COVID-19 period, we indeed lost family members and friends. But it's also true that Ghana recorded some of the lowest cases of mortality and infections worldwide. This was due to the implementation of a swift and robust COVID-19 response program led by His Excellency the President. We recorded 171,653 COVID-19 cases and 1,462 unfortunate deaths, as against 10.8 million cases recorded and 228,738 deaths on the African continent alone, and 249 million recorded cases and 2 million deaths in Europe. May the souls of our friends and family faithfully departed rest in peace. We invested immensely in education to ensure that school years were not disrupted, and we did so because we knew the alternative would be significantly costlier to our society. That was why the President ensured that our children returned to school earlier to write the examinations to enable us to build the requisite human capital for the future and for them not to lose a precious year. We ensured consistent power supply and kept the lights on to enable businesses and households function despite the increasing cost of legacy energy agreements. We continued paying salaries and wages of all public sector employees and kept everybody at work without laying off our workers, and factored in a 30% increment of base pay of the crisis. And we cleared up and strengthened the financial sector to promote entrepreneurship and private sector businesses, including agriculture, tourism, and hotels, manufacturing, etc. Mr. Speaker, 2022 was the most difficult year for me as Ghana's finance minister. On July 1st, 2022, we took what was then a difficult but necessary decision to request support from the IMF to implement our post-COVID-19 program of economic growth. The country was going through a dire period of economic uncertainties and despondency. Mr. Speaker, we have turned the corner, and more importantly, we are determined to continue down that path. Soon, we expect the measures taken resulting in economic activity and anything experienced in the history of the Fourth Republic. Our plans and programs should soon lead to a sustained increase in domestic production, including manufacturing and farming, replacing many of the products that we are used to importing. Mr. Speaker, when I presented the 2023 budget in November last year, I indicated that we will pursue major fiscal and monetary policy measures within the framework of the PC-PEG. Our coordinated response to the macro-fiscal challenges, which His Excellency the President charged us to develop in March 2022 before going to the IMF, that's the PC-PEG. As a first step towards fulfilling this objective, Parliament passed the revenue and expenditure measures, as well as several other macro-fiscal economic policies.
Honourable Minister, just a minute, the First Deputy Speaker to take the chair.
Mr. Speaker, we have turned the corner, and more importantly, we are determined to continue down that path. Mr. Speaker, when I presented the 2023 budget in November last year, I indicated that I will pursue major fiscal and monetary policy measures within the framework of the PCPEC. Our coordinated response to the macro-fiscal challenges, which His Excellency the President charged us to develop in March 2022 before going to the IMF. That's the PCPEC. As a first step towards fulfilling this objective, Parliament passed the revenue and expenditure measures as well as several other macro-critical economic policies we presented in the 2022 budget, and we are grateful for that. Along these lines, we also needed to create additional fiscal space by negotiating an International Monetary Fund program, 2, concluding a debt operations program, and 3, attracting significant investments, especially green investments, for a vibrant growth strategy. Mr. Speaker, I can now report that we have been diligent and resolute in implementing these measures and successfully negotiated the $3 billion US 3-year IMF ECF program, which was approved on 17th May 2023 to support the implementation of our PCPEC. Concluded on February 14th, the initial part of the debt operations, of which the domestic debt exchange program. Developed a framework for the V20 Climate Prosperity Plan to attract climate investments from the private sector, and initiated the Mutual Prosperity Dialogue to crowd in domestic and external private investment to underpin our growth strategy. These achievements have been with the support and commitment of this august House and the Ghanaian people. It demonstrates that when we speak with one voice, we can achieve what we set our minds to do. Genesis 11:6, if as one people speaking the same language, we have begun to do this, then nothing we plan to do will be impossible for us. Right Honorable Speaker, accordingly, His Excellency President Akufo-Addo has asked that I convey his profound gratitude to this House for passing all the revenue bills as well as expenditure measures. Indeed, our sincere gratitude also goes to all investors, financial institutions, and bondholders for the sacrifice, support, and forbearance in this difficult period of our country's economic history. We appreciate your contribution towards turning the corner and commitment to partner us in transforming the economy. We must also extend our appreciation to the IMF, the World Bank, and other development partners, as well as the G7 and G20 members who have stood so strongly with us. Mr. Speaker, for the first 6 months of the year, we continue making progress to exceed our non-oil revenue targets for the year. We have seen improvements in non-oil tax revenue collection despite some notable shortfalls in VAT. However, oil revenues are falling short of expectations due to changes in global prices. We will therefore undertake a downward review of the oil-related revenue as well as the corresponding expenditures to align with the underperformance of some of our revenue handles. Specifically, this will impact the annual budget funding amount. Mr. Speaker, in view of the reasons outlined above, as well as the lower domestic interest payment and amortization following the completion of a part of the DDEP and a reduction in the foreign finance capex, the appropriation has been revised from Ghana cedis 227.7 billion as presented and approved in November 2022 to 206.0 billion Ghana cedis. This is in line with Regulation 24, Sub-Regulation 3 of Public Financial Management Act Regulation 2019, LI 2378. Mr. Speaker, we will therefore not require a supplementary budget. Mr. Speaker, government is, however, committed to pursuing a robust growth strategy within the limited fiscal space and our fiscal consolidation program. This will be done by attracting domestic and foreign private sector investment and expanding production, which will be encouraged and stimulated by government policies and agencies. government's mutual prosperity dialogue with the private sector will seek to facilitate the ease of doing business in order to crowd in private, domestic, and foreign investments. Mr. Speaker, security continues to be a priority of government. The United Nations recently reported that over 1,800 terrorist attacks resulting in nearly 4,600 deaths were recorded in our West Africa region in the first 6 months of this year. Due to this instability, among others, increasing numbers of West African citizens are seeking refuge in our country. This has required a review of our security expenditures within the limited fiscal space. Mr. Speaker, this 2023 mid-year fiscal policy review will therefore provide an update on economic performance for the first half year of 2023 and outlook for the rest of the year. Provide an update on the implementation of the IMF-supported PCPEG, including update on structural reforms and the progress towards achieving the quantitative performance criteria and indicative targets. Provide an update on the debt restructuring program, present a revised 2023 fiscal framework which aligns with the IMF-supported PCPEG, and outline government's growth strategy to drive the recovery process. I will now proceed to update the House on the macro-fiscal performance of the economy since 2022. Mr. Speaker, as we usually do, the 2023 budget was presented in November 2022 using end September 2022 data. We now have end December 2022 data, which indicates that overall real GDP growth was 3.1% compared to the revised target of 3.7%. Non-oil real GDP growth was 3.8% compared to the revised target of 4.3%. End December inflation rates of 54.1% compared to the projected 28.5%. Total revenue and grants for the period amounted to 96.7 billion, 15.8% of GDP, compared to the revised target of 96.84 billion, 16.4% of GDP. Total expenditure on commitment basis amounted to 165.1 billion Ghana cedis, 27% of GDP, against a revised target of 133.8 billion, 22.6% of GDP. Overall budget deficit on commitment basis was 11.8% of GDP, against a revised target of a deficit of 6.3% of GDP. Primary balance on commitment basis was a deficit of 4.3% of GDP, against a revised target of a deficit of 0.7% of GDP. On cash basis, the overall budget deficit was 10.7% of GDP, against a revised target of a deficit of 6.6% of GDP. The corresponding primary balance on cash basis was a deficit of 3.2% of GDP, against a revised target of a surplus of 0.4% of GDP. And gross international reserves was equivalent to 2.7 months of import cover. Mr. Speaker, with approval of Parliament, government set out to achieve the following key macroeconomic targets for 2023. Overall real GDP growth of 2.8%, non-oil real GDP growth of 3%, end December inflation rate of 18.9%, overall budget deficit of 5.9% of GDP on commitment basis, and 7.7% on cash basis. Primary balance commitment basis of a surplus of 0.7% of GDP and a deficit of 1.1% of GDP on cash basis, and gross international reserve to cover not less than 3.3 months of imports. As I've indicated, we have made significant progress on restoring macroeconomic stability, and the narrative is changing. The economy is showing signs of recovery, the exchange rate has stabilized, inflation has softened, and interest rates have declined since December 2022. Mr. Speaker, these outturns are the results of focused implementation of all the measures we presented in the 2023 budget and the positive sentiments arising from the progress of the IMF program, which I will now discuss. Mr. Speaker, towards addressing the macro-fiscal challenges the economy faced in 2022, government engaged the IMF to support the implementation of our PC-PEG program. On 17th May 2023, the Executive Board of the IMF approved a 36-member standard credit facility in an amount equivalent to SDR's $2.242 billion, approximately $3 billion. The program is anchored on government PC-PEG and designed to restore macroeconomic stability and debt sustainability. It includes extensive reforms to strengthen resilience and lay the foundation for stronger and more inclusive growth. Mr. Speaker, the program has been designed to address the key issues facing the economy through the following key priority targeted interventions. Large and front-loaded fiscal consolidation to bring public finances back on a sustainable path. The program envisages a cumulative fiscal adjustment of 5.1 percentage points of GDP over the program period 2023 to 2026, over a fiscal effort of 3.8 percentage points in 2023 alone. The primary deficit on commitment basis will be reduced from 4.3% of GDP in 2022 to 0.5% in 2023. The fiscal consolidation will be executed by both mobilizing more domestic revenue and improving efficiency of spending. 2, to protect the vulnerable through enhancement of existing social protection programs, including the Livelihood Empowerment Against Poverty (LEAP), National Health Insurance Scheme, the Capitation Grant, and the School Feeding Program. The 2023 budget, for example, doubled the benefits under the LEAP program as well as boosted the allocations to the School Feeding Program. 3, strong and ambitious structural reforms in tax policy, revenue administration, public financial management, financial sector, as well as strong measures to enhance revenue mobilization and address weaknesses in the energy and cocoa sectors. Both are critical to bring public finances back on sustainable path while creating fiscal space for critical development spending. 4, to bring inflation under control through prudent monetary policy, including appropriate monetary policy tightening and the elimination of monetary financing of the budget. Containing inflation pressures requires coordination between fiscal and monetary policies. 5, to rebuild international reserve buffers to 3 months of import by the end of the program. The Bank of Ghana is pursuing enhanced flexible exchange rate policies to help rebuild international reserves. 6, to restore sustainability and preserve financial stability following the domestic debt exchange program to support private investments and growth. And 7, to pursue reforms to encourage private investments, strengthen growth, and create more jobs. Mr. Speaker, it is instructive to note that our path towards securing an approved IMF-supported program has been characterized by speed and resoluteness. More specifically, the following key and significant milestones were accomplished. We achieved staff-level agreement in December 2022, 6 months after we formally requested for the IMF support to back our PC-PEG. We were supported by China's agreement to co-chair Ghana's Paris Club Official Creditor Committee. We secured financing assurances for the Official Credit Committee, co-chaired by China and France on 12 May 2023, 5 months after our formal request in December 2022. We secured an IMF board approval on 17 May 2023, 5 months after the SLA and 10 months after a formal request for a fund program. We also secured IMF financing equivalent to 3 times Ghana's quota. We front-loaded disbursement of IMF resources with 40% in 2023 and the rest to be spread between 2024 and 2026, and successfully concluded a domestic exchange program. The results are clear. We are witnessing the catalytic impact of crowding in other resources. We are in discussions with the World Bank for a $900 million development policy operation and emergency support. The United States, through the International Development Finance Corporation, has announced a program to invest $300 million towards the construction of a data center under the G7 Partnership for Global Infrastructure and Investments. This is through the Development Finance Corporation of the U.S. Mr. Speaker, several key stakeholders played diverse roles in Ghana's successful journey towards approval of the IMF-supported program. On behalf of His Excellency the President, I would like to again express our sincere gratitude to the Right Honourable Speaker, Members of Parliament, our participating bondholders, retirees, financial institutions, and other stakeholders who played critical roles. Permit me to express our sincere gratitude to the Managing Director of the IMF, a team led by its Country Director, Stefan Roder, and the Executive Board for providing the unfathomable cooperation throughout the whole process. We are also grateful to the World Bank Group, the U.S. Treasury, U.S. Development Finance Corporation. Government appreciates our other development partners, both multilaterals at the AFDB and Afri-Exim, and bilaterals for their support under the program. Mr. Speaker, as a nation, we must and will prevail. Indeed, our only recourse is to be successful at the upcoming first review of the program in September 2023 and all other subsequent reviews. We are therefore respectfully calling on every member of this august House and all our fellow Ghanaians to support these reforms. Mr. Speaker, to support the effective implementation of the IMF-supported PCPEG, the government has put in place an implementation strategy. Status of progress towards achieving the program objectives. Mr. Speaker, the IMF-supported program will be monitored and reviewed semi-annually based on agreed targets to be met by end June and end December each year. We will prepare for a comprehensive assessment of the targets by the IMF during the first review in September 2023, which will assess 9 structural benchmarks, 6 quantitative performance criteria, and 3 indicative targets in 2023. Mr. Speaker, the IMF-supported PCPEG has also prioritized social protection reforms to ensure that the vulnerable are protected from the impact of the ongoing fiscal adjustment. Social spending on health, social protection, and education will be closely monitored to ensure timely disbursement of funds to beneficiaries. In addition, an indexation mechanism for benefits under the LEAP program will be put in place by end September 2023. Furthermore, the coverage of LEAP will be expanded and its targeting improved to cover the extreme poor by 2024. Mr. Speaker, Cabinet also approved the turnaround strategy for Cocoa Board as part of measures to improve financial viability of the institution and to position it to deliver increased value for the people of Ghana. I take this opportunity to assure all our key stakeholders of government's commitment to the unwavering implementation of our very own PCPEG, which undergirds the IMF-approved program. Debt operations. Mr. Speaker, we announced in the 2023 budget statement that we will embark on a debt restructuring program to alleviate fiscal pressures by 1, reducing debt servicing costs, 2, improving debt sustainability, and 3, ensuring macroeconomic stability and economic growth. The restructuring is critical to the implementation of the program. To ensure return to the path of debt sustainability, a comprehensive debt strategy centered on a restructuring program was pursued. Mr. Speaker, the perimeter for the restructuring includes both domestic, central government, and debt, and some parastatals, and external. The main aim of the operations is to reduce debt servicing costs and restore our debt sustainability. The debt operation focuses on achieving, by 2028, the present value of overall debt and external debt to GDP to below 55% and 40% thresholds respectively, and 2, external debt service to revenue and exports to revenue below the 18% and 15% thresholds, respectively. Mr. Speaker, on the domestic debt exchange program, on 5th December 2022, the government launched the DDEP in a transparent manner while seeking impact on bondholders. Of negotiations with the different bondholder groups and amendments to the original terms, government successfully completed the DDEP on 14 February 2022. Total bonds have amounted to 126.978 billion Ghana cedis, of 0.286 billion were held by pension funds, bringing the bonds to 97.7 billion cedis. The ministry received final participation of 88.9 billion Ghana cedis, representing 84.9% of total eligible bonds. The DDP has provided the government with increased fiscal flexibility and addressed cash and other liquidity constraints. Once again, we are grateful to all investors who participated in this exchange. Mr. Speaker, to complete the domestic debt operations, government announced in April 2023 its intention to further pursue the discussions around the following domestic debt instruments, which were excluded from the DDEP perimeter then: energy sector independent power producers, cocoa bills, local US dollar denominated bonds, and Bank of Ghana non-tradable debt. Out of these remaining debt instruments, government launched debt operations for the cocoa bills and local US denominated bonds on 14 July 2023. The settlement date is today, Mr. Speaker, 31st July 2023, and we look forward to a successful operation. Mr. Speaker, although pension funds were exempted from the main DDEP, we continue to engage them. Mr. Speaker, we are also engaging with the IPPs on debt relief and financing arrangements to achieve both debt sustainability for Ghana and financial sustainability for the energy sector. As part of the restructuring projects for external debt, government requested the treatment of the bilateral debt under the G20 Common Framework beyond the debt service suspension initiative. Government also held a series of engagements with its bilateral creditors via the Paris Club to provide answers to support Ghana's IMF ECF request. The Official Creditor Committee for Bilateral Creditors was established and co-chaired by China and France. The committee provided financing assurances on 12 May, as I stated, to support the IMF's board approval of Ghana's IMF ECF request on 17 May 2023. Mr. Speaker, government has also begun the process of negotiating with its commercial creditors, our Eurobond investors. 2 bondholder groups have been formed, comprising domestic and regional bondholders, as well as international bondholders. Government has already shared a set of data and scenarios to commence discussions. On the restructuring of Eurobonds, we expect to receive counter-offers from the bondholders in the short term and envisage an agreement by year-end. Mr. Speaker, the financial sector comprising commercial banks, special deposit-taking institutions, insurance sector, and fund managers participated significantly in the DDEP. The effects of the debt operation in the financial sector is elevated liquidity and solvency risk from impairment losses. Regulators, including the Bank of Ghana, provided temporary regulatory forbearance to mitigate the liquidity impact of the DDEP. Importantly, government is working with key partners to establish a Ghana Financial Stability Fund to provide liquidity and solvency support to the financial institutions. The eligibility criteria agreed with regulators and international partners will be published soon. Mr. Speaker, these macroprudential interventions and operations were also to address the impact of the large external shocks within a wider global economic context, which I now proceed to discuss. We are also mindful of the impact of the debt exchange program on individuals, and government is working hard to stabilize the economy towards a faster economic recovery to ameliorate impact on the welfare of individuals. Mr. Speaker, global developments. The global economy continues to struggle through a patchy recovery phase following the shocks, including those from the COVID-19 pandemic and the Russia-Ukraine war. It is within such context that the IMF in its April 2023 World Economic Outlook update projects global output growth to decline significantly to 2.8% in 2023 from 3.4% in 2022, before rising slightly to 3% in 2024. The projected slowdown reflects synchronous policy tightening around the globe, especially in the United States, Euro areas, the United Kingdom and China, to contain the surge in inflation and worsening financial conditions. Despite signs of modest growth in early 2023, persistent high inflation and the global financial market turmoil are proving too strong and dampened hopes of a robust recovery. Mr. Speaker, the price of crude oil declined by 15.7% between August 2022 and February 2023. This was due to a weakened demand, largely attributed to a huge decline in oil consumption in China. According to IMF's World Economic Outlook update, July 2023, crude oil prices are projected to fall from an average of $96.4 a barrel to $73.1 a barrel in 2023. However, gold and cocoa prices have performed better than anticipated. Mr. Speaker, on the domestic front, global development severely impacted the domestic economy. The performance of key indicators in 2022 as follows. Overall, real GDP growth declined from 5.1% in 2021 to 3.1% in 2022. This was lower than the 3.5% projected for the year. Non-oil GDP growth declined over the period, recording a growth of 3.8% compared to 6.6% recorded in 2021. Headline inflation accelerated consecutively from 13.9% in January to 29.8% in June and to a peak of 54% in December 2022, following the sharp currency depreciation and surge in commodity prices. Interest rates broadly trended upwards across the spectrum of the yield curve, consistent with the tightening policy stance. The 91-day and 182-day Treasury bill rates increased to 35.48% and 36.23% respectively in December 2022, from 12.49% and 13.19% respectively in the same period 2021. Cumulatively, the Ghana cedi depreciated by 30.0%, 21.2%, and 25.3% against the US dollar, the pound sterling, and the euro, respectively. This, compared with an appreciation of 3.5% against the euro and a depreciation of 4.1% and 3.1% against the US dollar and the pound, respectively, in 2021. And gross international reserves declined by 3.47 billion US dollars to 6.238 billion US dollars to 2.7 months of import cover. Mr. Speaker, on the fiscal front, there were several key developments in 2022. Government sought to, among others, strengthen its fiscal consolidation program, which commenced in 2021. The objective was to gradually return to the Fiscal Responsibility Act thresholds of a fiscal deficit of no more than 5% of GDP. The strategy included pursuing a strong revenue-led consolidation to complement expenditure rationalization measures. However, owing to the several factors, government fiscal policy suffered major setbacks from both external and domestic shocks. Mr. Speaker, before discussing the 2022 fiscal outturns, we would like to note that the fiscal anchor in the context of the IMF-supported PCPEG is the primary balance on commitment basis. To align with this requirement, government therefore had indicated in paragraph 210 of the 2023 budget statement that the fiscal accounts will henceforth be reported on commitment basis, thereby taking into account outstanding and paid commitments of government. Mr. Speaker, the assessment on commitment basis promotes transparency, enables a real-time monitoring of government's fiscal performance, and provides a real-time review on the payables, thus helping to prevent while reducing the accumulation of arrears. This information is also essential for the public to get a comprehensive view of the bold fiscal policies to restore fiscal and debt sustainability in Ghana. Mr. Speaker, with this context, the provisional data on government's fiscal operations for 2022 indicate that 1. Total revenue and grants for the period amounted to 96.65 billion compared to the mid-year review target of 96.84 billion and the projected outturn of 98.08 billion. And on the other hand, total expenditures on commitment basis amounted to 165.06 billion Ghana cedis compared to the mid-year target of 133.84 billion and the projected outturn of 159.01 billion Ghana cedis. Mr. Speaker, the higher expenditure together with the lower revenue outturn resulted in an overall budget deficit on commitment basis of 72.19 billion, 11.8% of GDP, compared to the 2022 mid-year review target of 37 billion, 6.3% of GDP, and the projected outturn of 60.9 billion, 9.9% of GDP. Mr. Speaker, the corresponding primary balance on commitment for the period was a deficit of 26.51 billion, 4.3% of GDP, compared to the 2022 mid-year review target of a deficit of 4.36 billion, 0.7% of GDP, and the projected outturn of a deficit of 16.92 billion, 2.7% of GDP. Petroleum revenue and utilization for 2022. Mr. Speaker, total petroleum receipts, proceeds from liftings and other petroleum receipts, as of December 2022, amounted to 1.43 billion. The amount comprises receipts from the 63rd to the 68th liftings from the Jubilee field, the 20th and 21st liftings from the 10 fields, and the 9th and 10th and 11th liftings from the Sankofa field. In addition to the total receipts for the year under review, petroleum receipts that spilled over from 2021 to 2022 was $14.82 million, bringing the total amount distributed to $1.44 billion. This compares with the amount distributed of $808.6 million for the same period in 2021. A total of $581.5 million was transferred into the Ghana Petroleum Funds in 2022 compared to $227 million in 2021. Out of the amount transferred, the Ghana Heritage Fund received $174 million against $68 million in 2021, while the Ghana Stabilization Fund received $407.06 million compared to $159.24 million in 2021. The total amount transferred in 2022 from petroleum liftings and related proceeds to the annual budget funding amount was $526.31 million US compared to $352.79 million in 2021. Mr. Speaker, on public debt developments, as at end December 2022, Ghana's central government debt and guaranteed debt in nominal terms stood provisionally at $435.3 billion, up from $351.8 billion at end 2021, representing an increase of 23.7%. Using the revised GDP released by the Ghana Statistical Services in April 2023, the debt to GDP ratio as at end 2022 stood at 71.3%. Mr. Speaker, the composition of the total debt stock was made up of provisional amount of $240.9 billion equivalent to 39.5% of GDP, and 194.4 billion, equivalent to 31.8% of GDP, for external and domestic debt, respectively. Mr. Speaker, I now proceed to update the House on the performance of the economy since January 2023 and the reason why there's a consensus that we are indeed turning the corner. Available data indicates that overall first quarter growth for 2023 was 4.2%, up from 3% recorded for the same period in 2022. This growth, Mr. Speaker, largely reflected an increase in the services sector, which recorded a growth of 10.1%. Headline inflation eased in the first half of 2023 from the peak of 54.1% in December 2022. Headline inflation gradually trended downwards from 53.6% in January 2023 to 42.5% in June 2023. The moderation in inflation was largely supported by monetary policy tightening, relative stability in the exchange rate, and lower and stable export petroleum prices. Cumulatively, the Ghana cedi depreciated by 22.1% against the US dollar in the year to July 17, 2023, compared to 21.1% in the same period in 2022. The cedi, excluding the January 2023 depreciation of 20%, has depreciated by an impressive 1.8% between February and January 17, 2023. Total export receipts, Mr. Speaker, fell by 7.9% to $8.2 billion on the back of lower crude oil export receipts. Crude oil exports declined by 41.3% year-on-year due to a 21.4% decline in volumes and 25.3% fall in prices. Current accounts recorded a provisional surplus of $849 million compared with a deficit of $1.1 billion for the same period, 2022. And gross international reserves dropped from $6.2 billion at the end of December 2022 to $5.3 billion, 2.5 million in June 2023, reflecting BOGs reducing their foreign liabilities in line with the IMF program. Net international reserves received a boost from gold reserves and improved to $2.3 billion to 1.1 months of import cover compared to $1.4 billion or 0.6 months of import cover recorded at the end of December 2022. Mr. Speaker, on banking developments and the outlook, the banking sector posted unexpected, relatively strong performance during the first half of the year. Despite the lingering effects of the DDEP, the banks have reported increased deposits and investments, higher profitability, and return on equity of over 35%. The impact of the DDEP, such as the increase in non-performing loans, was partly moderated by the timely introduction of temporary regulatory reliefs. In the outlook, the operationalization of the $750 million Ghana Financial Stability Fund and the planned recapitalization of banks would ensure stability as well as financial intermediation to support the private sector. Mr. Speaker, the provincial data on government fiscal operation for the first half of 2023 indicate: 1. A slower pace in expenditure execution relative to revenue shortfall, resulting in an overall budget deficit on commitment basis of 6.3 billion Ghana cedis, 0.8% of GDP, compared to the 2023 half-year budget deficit targets of 28.3 billion or 3.5% of GDP. A corresponding primary balance on commitment basis of a surplus, Mr. Speaker, of 8.8 billion Ghana cedis, 1.1% of GDP, compared to the target of a surplus of 310 million Ghana cedis. Overall cash deficit of 10.3 billion, 1.3% of GDP, against the 2023 half-year budget target of 35.4 billion, 4.4% of GDP, and a corresponding primary balance on cash basis of a surplus of 4.8 billion, 0.6% of GDP, against the 2023 half-year deficit target of 6.9 billion or 0.9% of GDP. We are back on track to a positive primary balance. Mr. Speaker, the fiscal balances are driven by total revenue and grants for the first half of 2021 billion, 8.4% below the target of 64.7 billion. Despite the shortfall, the outturn shows a nominal year-on-year growth of 41.8%. The key driver of revenue deviation is the lower than programmed oil receipts and total expenditure of 68.5 billion, 26.3% below the program expenditure of 92.9 billion. All other expenditure lines were contained within their respective targets for the period, except for compensation, fees, and expenditure on goods and services. The higher than program compensation of employees outturn stems from higher payments for wage and salaries from the implementation of the 30% base pay increase for public sector workers, which was agreed to after the 2023 budget was presented and approved by this August House last year. We needed, Mr. Speaker, to protect our workers. Mr. Speaker, government introduced several revenue measures to support the fiscal consolidation and growth agenda. The policy interventions were specifically targeted at growing the revenue base to yield an estimated 1.35% of GDP. The Ministry of Finance and GRA are working together to ensure the realization of the full yield in the near future through enhanced collection efforts, governance, and EVAT implementation. Mr. Speaker, arising from the DDEP, several structural changes have commenced in the reporting of Ghana's debt data. The debt from the special purpose vehicles, which previously was not part of the central government debt, has now been included. Furthermore, we'll be including the long-term debt of selected SOEs such as Cocoa Board and contingent liabilities arising from the IPPs, PPAs, and financial sector recapitalization. Mr. Speaker, the macroeconomic environment has changed significantly since the 2023 budget was presented to this House in November 2022. Mr. Speaker, although pressure still exists and there are formidable risks in the horizon, our economy is position than it was 7 months ago, as the macroeconomic environment has seen relative stability since the beginning of the year. This is largely explained by factors including the positive sentiments following the staff-level agreement reached in December 2022 and the subsequent approval of the 3-year, $3 billion IMF ECF program, the eventual passage of all fiscal measures in the 2023 budget by the House, and the completion of the DDEP program, and China's agreement to co-chair the OCC with France. Mr. Speaker, I have also discussed the significant improvements in the key macroeconomic indicators, including inflation, exchange rate, interest rates, reserve position, growth rate, and the performance of the bank since 2022. Mr. Speaker, all these developments, together with the need to align with the targets of the IMF-supported PC-PEC program, warrant a division to the macroeconomic framework. This was necessary because the framework was guided by the September 2022 data that underpinned the 2023 budget in November 2022. The revisions to the macro-fiscal framework generally seek to align the 2023 mid-year fiscal review with the IMF ECF-supported PC-PEC program. Mr. Speaker, key revisions to the macro-fiscal target for 2023 year include: 1. Overall rate of 1.5% down from 2.8%. Non-oil revenue GDP growth rate of 1.5% down from 3%. End period headline inflation of 31.3% from 18.9%. Primary balance on commitment basis of a deficit of 0.5% of GDP compared to a surplus of 0.7% of GDP, aligning with IMF-supported primary balances. Gross international reserves sufficient to cover at least 0.8 months of imports of goods and service by 2023. Mr. Speaker, revisions to GDP or projections, the overall real GDP growth for 2023 has been revised to 1.5% from 2.8%, and non-oil real GDP growth has also been revised to 1.5% from 3%. The downward revision in projected growth for 2023 is an indication of a broad slowdown in the three sectors of the economy as a result of factors such as the fiscal consolidation plan and difficult global conditions. Mr. Speaker, overall GDP growth is, however, projected to rebound to 2.8%, 4.7%, and 4.9% in 2024, 25, and 26, respectively. This is a result of implementation of growth-oriented and structural transformation strategies in the PCPEC. We have, however, been charged in the PCPEC to develop an enhanced growth strategy supported by crowding in of private, domestic, and foreign investment to further boost growth. We are confident of a private sector outlook to boost growth and jobs. Mr. Speaker, the 2023 revised fiscal framework is now fully aligned with the IMF program fiscal objectives in terms of primary balance, cash and commitment, revenue path, and the trajectory of primary expenditures. The drivers of the revisions to 2023 fiscal framework includes fiscal developments for January to June 2023 reflecting shortfalls in revenues and lower spending, increase in base pay on single spine salary structure of 30% compared to the assumed 20% for the 2023 budget, partial restoration of cap transfers to the NHIS and GET fund, the impact of the completed DDEP on debt service costs as well as on revenue mobilization, IMF ECF program disbursement for 2023 of $1.2 billion and reflection of other catalytic financing, including the World Bank's US $530 million, a DPO of $300 million, and emergency projects of $233 million, and expected disbursement of $103 million from the AFDB. Revision in exchange rates, interest rates, crude oil prices, crude oil volumes, and GDP projections, and the need to align 2023 mid-year review to the approved IMF project-supported PCPEC. These realignments, Mr. Speaker, in the 2023 fiscal framework results in a revised primary balance on commitment basis of a deficit of 0.5% of the revised GDP. This is an adjustment of 3.2% from the 3.5% of GDP, lower than the initial target of a surplus of 0.7% of GDP set in the 2023 budget. This aligns with the IMF-supported PCPEC fiscal consolidation path. Mr. Speaker, at the time of presenting the 2023 budget, benchmark revenue crude oil prices was $88.5 per barrel, was used to project petroleum revenue for 2023 in line with provisions of the Petroleum Revenue Management Act. As amended, recent global economic developments had led to a decreased demand for crude oil. Therefore, consistent with Section 7 of the Petroleum Revenue Management Act, the average crude oil price has been revised to $74 per barrel, down from the price of $88.55 per barrel using the 2023 budget. Accordingly, the total petroleum receipts have been revised downwards from $1.48 billion to $1.008 billion, representing a 32% decline. Mr. Speaker, in the 2023 budget, government outlined a series of measures to mitigate the impact of the severe economic challenges and also to preserve growth. These include the implementation of flagship programs such as the One District, One Factory, Planting for Food and Jobs, Phase 2, Strategic Anchor Industries, Infrastructure Poverty Eradication and Program, IPEP, Ghana Cares, YouStart, Agenda 111, among others. Mr. Speaker, within the context of our IMF-backed PCPEG, these interventions assume greater significance in promoting growth and medium-term fiscal consolidation. In addition, as stated earlier, we are pursuing a social protection agenda to mitigate the impact of adjustment on the vulnerable. Mr. Speaker, in line with government's unwavering commitment to industrialization, the implementation of the flagship One District, One Factory initiative is on course. As of June 2023, 126 factories were operational nationwide. Over 160,000 direct and indirect jobs have been created, especially for the youth who have been mobilized to establish agro-processing factories in 58 districts. Mr. Speaker, government initiated Agenda 111 to address infrastructure deficits in the health sector and improve healthcare outcomes in the country post-COVID-19. As at May 2023, total payments under the program stood at $189 million with 83 active projects on site in all 16 regions of the country. Mr. Speaker, Planting for Foods and Jobs has brought substantial improvements in Ghana's agriculture sector. This has resulted in increased food security, employment along agricultural value chains, and accessibility of raw materials for developing industries. The program has directly contributed to increased crop yields for major food staples such as maize, rice, and soya by 135%, 67%, and 18% respectively within the period. After a comprehensive review, government is finalizing PFJ Phase 2 to ensure a more efficient and targeted support for the agricultural sector. The key elements of Phase 2 are inputs credit systems, storage and distribution infrastructure, commodity trading, and digitized platforms. Mr. Speaker, I can also report that efforts towards promoting commercial agriculture, building technological capability, and advancing digitalization under the Ghana Cares program are on track. Last year, I indicated the government is spearheading the Economic Enclaves project to establish growth poles in key locations, including Kasunya, Greater Accra, Kumawu, Ashanti, and Banda in OT regions. The approach under the EEP is to provide agriculture infrastructure and land development support to entrepreneurial youth and the private sector. Mr. Speaker, to enhance production and value addition in the enclaves, the provision of ancillary services such as housing, training, facilities, irrigation, canals, farm roads, and electricity have also commenced. Mr. Speaker, it is gratifying to note that the domestic private sector has responded positively to the provision of these services. About 10 medium and large-scale entrepreneurs with experience in the commercial agriculture space have applied to play diverse roles ranging from anchor farmers to machine and equipment services in the EEP site in Kasunya. Mr. Speaker, in partnership with the National Service Scheme, about 20,000 acres of land in Sechere Kumawu in the Ashanti region is being developed to accelerate maize, tomato, groundnuts, and animal production. Mr. Speaker, government expects that by end 2023, the DEP will have fully seeded some 7,500 acres of rice onboarded qualified private sector entrepreneurs as anchor farmers embarked on value chain activities such as rice milling and packaging in Kasunya, and developed and seeded 1,500 acres of lands in Kumawu and Banda, respectively, and also engage private sector partners in these enclaves. With these efforts, Mr. Speaker, we expect to gradually drive down the food component of inflation, create jobs for our youth, improve food security, and reduce the volatility of the forest market. YouStart, Mr. Speaker, to equip participants with entrepreneurial skills, investment readiness tools, as well as coaching and mentoring services under the USA initiative. 26,626 persons nationwide have received business advisory support services since its launch last year. We'll continue to work with participating financial institutions, National Entrepreneurship and Innovations Program, Enterprises Agency to provide soft loans and managerial skills for the setting up of youth-led enterprises. Mr. Speaker, the National Entrepreneurship and Innovation Program with support from the Ghana Economic Transformation Project launched the HUBS Acceleration Grants Program in April of this year. The program has supported 30 business and innovation hubs with grants to resource startups in communities nationwide. Each hub has received up to US $180,000 and is required to resource 20 startups. In the second half of the year, 50 new startups will be supported to set up across the country. Mr. Speaker, to make Ghana the tourism hub for the West Africa region, the domestic and regional tourism campaign.
Honourable Minister, kindly take a sip of water while Mr. Speaker takes back the chair.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, to make Ghana the tourism hub for the West Africa region, the domestic and regional tourism campaign dubbed Experience Ghana, Share Ghana was intensified across the country by government. Our goal is to complement this campaign. The Kwame Nkrumah Memorial Park, which was redeveloped and modernized with support from the World Bank and other development partners, was commissioned by President Akufo-Addo on 4 July 2023. The redeveloped park will boost domestic and heritage tourism and is expected, Mr. Speaker, to attract over 1 million tourists annually. Government will continue with the redevelopment of Aburi Botanical Gardens, Salaga and Picora slavery camps, and Yas Santua Mausoleum to boost domestic tourism. Furthermore, in partnership with the Ghana Museums and Monuments Board, efforts will continue to renovate selected forts, castles, and museums across the country. Mr. Speaker, government will work closely with the private sector to improve key tourist sites and events as part of the Beyond the Year of Return initiative. We have made considerable progress towards achieving 1.2 million visitors for 2023, with 150,000 jobs along the value chain, and 2 million foreign visitors, and 1.5 million in the domestic tourism by 2025. Mr. Speaker, to improve mobility and accessibility, as well as safety along major trunk roads, the following projects are at various stages of completion. Work on 31.2 kilometers Asim-Fosu-Asim-Praso portion of the National Trunk Road N8 was completed and commissioned in June 2023. Accra-Tema Beach Road, Lot 1 and Lot 2, 79% and 89% complete respectively. Construction of a 3-tier interchange at Nungwa Barrier is ongoing. Development works on the Kumasi Lake Road and Drainage Extension Project 98% complete. Selected roads in Sekondi and Takoradi Phase 1 is a fifth of the way complete. Tema Flower Road 30%. In Samao Fanko 26%. Reconstruction of Bechimen, Techimentia, Akumadan Road 64% complete. Reconstruction of Aguna and Kota in Kwanta, Takwa Road 34% complete. Phase 2 of Obechavidi, Lamte Circle Interchange and other ancillary works 86% complete. Construction of a 4-tier interchange at Swami in the Asanchi region to commence. Construction of 50 prefabricated bridges in all 16 regions and continued in 2023 are 86% complete. Design, fabrication, and delivery of 87 steel panel bridges is ongoing with 45 bridges delivered. New bridges under construction at Trifupraso to separate vehicular traffic from the railway line is 93% complete. Government will embark on a community roads improvement program to increase productivity and facilitate the transportation of food crops. District assemblies will be given complementary equipment to ensure that their local roads are motorable throughout the year. Mr. Speaker, this notwithstanding, government remains committed to improving road infrastructure in line with the fiscal consolidation plan in the IMF-backed PCPEC program and in partnership with the private sector. Mr. Speaker, the road sector's public-private partnership program for the financing, construction and management of road infrastructure has 2 projects at different stages of preparation. Phase 1 of the Accra-Tema motorway extension project, 31.7 kilometers, involves the reconstruction of the motorway. The concession agreement and draft engineering, procurement and construction agreement have been finalized and will be laid in this House. The development of Tema arterial roads will be structured on a PPP basis using the build, operate and transfer model. The appraisal of the project is ongoing. The civil works on phase 1 of the Anamabo Fisheries College project is complete, and enrollment and training of students will commence by end of the year. As part of efforts to prevent diversion and hoarding of premixed fuel, which results in acute shortages, 37 out of a target of 50 premixed automated vending machines were installed in various landing beaches at Elmina, Choco, and Nungwa, among others. Government will install the remaining 13 automated vending machines by end of the year at various landing beaches across the country. Government has also piloted the use of electronic monitoring systems on trawlers to help check illegal, unreported, and unregulated fishing practices. Mr. Speaker, under the Infrastructure for Poverty Eradication Program, government continues to embark on strategic investments across our communities nationwide in line with fiscal consolidation plan through the development authorities. Approximately 340 projects have been completed and accordingly handed out to the beneficiary communities. The remaining 297 projects are at different stages of development, of completion. Mr. Speaker, as part of our efforts to take full advantage of AFCFTA, government has established an export trade house in Nairobi, Kenya, to promote made in Ghana products and services. We have also undertaken a marketing expansion expedition to Kenya with 63 Ghanaian companies to introduce them to the East African market. Government has also facilitated the issuance of AFCFTA certificates of origin to 51 Ghanaian companies and businesses covering 300 product lines, indicating eligibility to be traded under AFCFTA. Mr. Speaker, government remains committed to promoting access to competitive financing for the private sector. Over the course of the past 5 years, government has established and recapitalized critical institutions that are able to provide financial intermediation to the private sector. These institutions include Gersel, Development Bank of Ghana, Consolidated Bank of Ghana, the Ghana Commodity Exchange, the Ghana Infrastructure Investment Fund, and the Venture Capital Trust Fund. Mr. Speaker, as the economy recovers, we need to support these critical institutions to deepen their interaction with private sector to spur growth and create more jobs. Government will place emphasis on supporting DBG capital raising to $1 billion mark in the medium term and disbursing about $1 billion Ghana cedis in loans from the current 450 million by end of the year. DBG and Gersel to provide partial credit guarantees that will reduce risk and attract more private sector actors to expand agricultural operations. Operationalizing an equity fund in partnership with other private sector investors to augment existing capital for SMEs by DBG. And supporting GIF to execute commercially sustainable infrastructure construction solutions, including the Agenda 111 hospitals Accra-Tema Expressway project and affordable university hostel accommodation. Mr. Speaker, the Ghana Nuclear Power Program has made significant policy progress towards the development of Ghana's first nuclear power plant. Government has shortlisted vendor companies and countries to identify the economical and resilient nuclear power technology for Ghana as a source of clean and sustainable energy and other peaceful purposes. Mr. Speaker, total oil production from all the producing assets within Ghana was approximately 18.5 million barrels from January to May 2023. This translates to an average production of 122,000 barrels per day. Total gas exports to the gas processing plant at Atuobo and the onshore receiving facility at Zanzule within the same.
Honourable Minister, just a minute. Honourable members, having regard to the state of business of the House, I direct that sitting be held outside a prescribed period. I so direct. Minister, you may continue.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the cash waterfall mechanism and the natural gas clearing have been used to equitably distribute revenues in the sector. Under the updated ESRP, the cash waterfall mechanism is being reformed to ensure mandatory compliance to provide cash flow predictability to key players, IPPs and state energy entities within the energy sector. To address the impact of excess capacity payments on the economy, government has sustained collaborative engagement of IPPs. Currently, IPPs are being engaged to restructure their accrued outstanding balances and eliminate payment shortfalls and arrears accrual in the sector. The gas sales agreement between VRA and NGAS has been renegotiated to reduce the take-or-pay commitment and other financial obligations to the state. Mr. Speaker, the World Bank that climate change could cost Ghana approximately 1.7% of GDP annually by 2030 if left unaddressed. Cognizant of this assessment, government is working to secure carbon financing to support its nationally determined contributions and meet its commitment under the Paris Agreement. This will drive foreign direct reinvestments to benefit local businesses. Mr. Speaker, as part of our efforts to address loss and damage from climate change, Ghana, as one of the first Pathfinder countries, launched the in-country process for Ghana's participation in the Global Shield Against Climate Risk and the Global Risk Modeling Alliance. These initiatives will enable us to assess quantitatively our climate risk, design solutions informed by the data, and facilitate access to resources from the Global Shield. Mr. Speaker, government in partnership with the Green Climate Fund has established the Ghana Shear Landscape Emission Reduction Project at an estimated cost of $54.5 million. The project will focus on the shear landscape and will address the country's efforts to reduce emissions from deforestation and forest degradation. Additionally, government is implementing the Ghana Cocoa Forest RED program, which covers 5.9 million hectares, 79% of reserves, 21% on reserves in 7 regions. The program will benefit 12 million urban and rural residents. Ghana has become the second country in Africa after Mozambique to receive RED class payments in January 2023. Under the leadership of the President, Mr. Speaker, we are transforming the Climate Vulnerable Forum and V20 into permanent intergovernmental organizations. The aim is to champion principally a fair share agenda to ensure appropriate financing for adaptation, mitigation, and loss and damage, whilst leveraging our natural resources to raise carbon financing for accelerated climate action and to ensure that the 1.5 degrees Celsius temperature threshold is not breached. The President, Mr. Speaker, currently chairs the Climate Vulnerable Forum, while the Finance Minister chairs the V20 group of finance ministers. This is an organization of 58 countries with a population of 1.5 billion people in the most affected regions of the world. Mr. Speaker, government continues to sustain social protection programs to protect the poor and the vulnerable. The half-year performance of the identified programs are provided below. Under the LEAP program, government disbursed a total of 169.95 million as of June 2023 to 346,000 households comprising 1.5 million individuals. This includes the increase of the monthly grant to beneficial households from 32 cedis to 64 cedis for one-member household and 38 cedis to 76 for two-member households. Our target under this program period is to reach about 8% of the population, i.e. 2.5 million people. Under the Ghana School Feeding Program, coverage increased considerably from the 1.67 million beneficiaries in 2016 to 3.8 million beneficiaries by 2023. The feeding grants cost per meal, per child, per day increased from 1 cedi to 120 cedis, 1 cedi 20 pesos for the 2023 academic year. We have also settled all arrears owed to caterers under the program for the second and third terms of the 2022 academic year and the first term of the 2023 academic year. The capitation grants contributed to increased enrollment in public basic schools from 6,048,897 pupils for the 2021-2022 academic year to 6,114,302 pupils for the 2022-2023 academic year. Under the Free Senior High School, Technical and Vocational Education and Training Free TVET programs, a total of 447,396 first-year students enrolled during the 2022-2023 academic year to bring the total number of Free Senior High School TVET beneficiaries to 1,318,035 students. Government continued with the construction of 9 state-of-the-art TVET centers to offer modern facilities and equipment, enable effective skills training, and empower young people with the relevant skills required for employment and entrepreneurship. Under our complementary education for underprivileged groups, including out-of-school children, government commenced the implementation of Cycle 8 of the Complementary Basic Education Program in February 2023 with a total enrollment of 5,000 learners as at end 2023. Mr. Speaker, the PCPEG government program is implementing with the support of the IMF ECF facility requires strong fiscal consolidation. This will enable us quickly re-establish macroeconomic stability and debt sustainability. These are necessary preconditions for long-term economic growth, job creation, and rapid transformation. A key pillar of the PCPEG is the focus on inclusive growth. Our renewed push for growth is informed by the usual experience that fiscal consolidation tends to have negative impact on growth. For the medium term, we are targeting revised economic growth rates of 1.5%, 2.8%, and 4.7% for 2025. Mr. Speaker, we need to be deliberate and strategic in our actions if we are to exceed our post-COVID-19 strong economic growth, which averaged 7% compared to the 4.5% and 2.6% in lower middle income countries and sub-Saharan Africa. With the economy showing signs of stabilization, government intends to pursue a growth agenda that is fully aligned with the 2028 timeline for returning to a path of debt sustainability. Mr. Speaker, given the limited fiscal space
as well as our determination not to accumulate new arrears, our growth agenda will be mainly financed from domestic and external private sector investments, as well as a rationalization of ongoing programs. The approach is to prioritize existing programs that are critical for growth and can be implemented to deliver quick results without huge demands on the available budgetary resources. Ultimately, we will aggressively encourage the private sector under the Ghana Mutual Prosperity Dialogue framework to promote shared growth anchored on job creation, food security, exports, and import substitution. Towards this objective, government expects to finalize a growth strategy in August 2023, an enhanced growth strategy that is. Mr. Speaker, the key elements of the enhanced growth strategy include accelerating scaling up and aggregation in agriculture and value addition for key staples such as rice, poultry, maize, soya, and tomatoes, supporting industrial parks and economic zones that promote innovation and positive spillovers and efficiency for key sectors such as the automotive, pharmaceutical, technology, textiles, and garment industry, promoting tourism to attract international and domestic tourists to boost incomes and create jobs, deepening the digitalization of public service to promote efficiency in service delivery and protecting the public purse, expanding housing delivery programs to improve access to jobs and accommodation, and deepening financial intermediation programs to enhance inclusion and entrepreneurship. Mr. Speaker, preparing this 2023 mid-year budget, we have held extensive engagements of Cabinet and of also diverse stakeholders, including organized labor, employer associations, AGI, Ghana Union of Traders, GUTA, Peasant Farmers Association, civil society organizations, Chamber of Mines, think tanks, African Leadership Institute for West Africa, the academia, faith-based organizations, the investor community, Council of State, National Development Planning Commission, chief directors, PPME, directorates of MDAs, chief executive of all metropolitan, municipal, and industrial assemblies, and many, many others. In all of these meetings, as Speaker, stakeholders provided insights into issues such as widening the tax net, SOE governance, expenditure controls, optimizing extractive industry contributions, providing increased and targeted support to agriculture and industry, revamping ports operations and customs duties, as well as growing and changing the structure of the economy. Mr. Speaker, this feedback has been illuminating and well received. The faith-based organization, for example, agreed to form a committee to educate their congregation on their responsibilities to paying taxes. We will continue to engage to find mutually acceptable solutions as we prepare the 2024 budget statement in November 2023. Mr. Speaker, our engagement with the private sector was more about how to manage the economic crisis that befell us. The result is that we are seeing today we have indeed turned the corner. The crisis is behind us. There is greater certainty and predictability in the economy now than was the case previously. Businesses can plan better. The task ahead of us now is how to get businesses to do better. Starting from August and as part of preparations for the 2024 budget, the Ministry, together with other relevant sector ministries and agencies, will be hosting a series of strategic engagements with various industries to help us tailor government interventions to their specific needs. There is a big opportunity for us as a country to rebuild our economy, to be more resilient and vibrant than before, and to have the capacity to deliver more for the masses. This is the focus of government now, and with the help of this House and the support of the nation and the guidance of the Almighty, we know we will get there. Mr. Speaker, last Friday, I had a singular privilege to be invited to participate
in the joint caucus meetings of Parliament. Indeed, the meeting effectively reflected the theme of the 2023 in-carbon budget. Mr. Speaker, it was a pleasant and intimate experience. I appreciated the opportunity to engage and receive valuable feedback from the honourable members. I want to thank the leadership of the House for that opportunity and the shared agency which was exhibited to transform our economy. Mr. Speaker, I'll be the first to admit that it has been an extraordinarily difficult year for our country and our citizens. Whilst most countries are still going through difficulties due to what is happening globally, our economic crisis also emanates from fundamental and systemic weaknesses that we must boldly confront. These include our low revenue to GDP ratio, our high demand and dependence on imports, including food products that can easily be produced here, our inefficient power management, lack of robust expenditure and commitment control systems, the numerous statutory funds of expenditure and economic governance, and weak SOE governance. Mr. Speaker, what I have outlined today begins a strong effort on the part of government to address these issues. Most of the structural reforms we propose in the PCPEC, which we secured an IMF program, are geared towards addressing these fundamental issues. In the next 15 months, there will be renewed efforts to undertake the necessary reforms and implement very critical measures. Mr. Speaker, I want to once again acknowledge the sacrifice that our people have made, especially in the rollout of the DPP, and governments sincerely appreciate all these sacrifices. We are, Mr. Speaker, a resilient people, but we must be resolute if we are to get our community across the Jordan. On our part, we will ensure that we implement systems to enhance revenue collection through compliance measures to bring public finances back to a sustainable path while growing the real sector of the economy, especially agriculture. Implement the necessary structural reforms to strengthen expenditure commitment control, avoid arrears accumulation, and protect the public purse. Strengthen SOE self-governance, review statutory funds, and ensure improved alignment of key priorities, address the energy sector challenges, and implement the accelerated community roads improvement phase 2 to expand motorability and improve roads nationwide. Mr. Speaker, while concluding the 2023 budget statement in November 2022 in this House, I did emphasize that our unity in Kabom will be vital in confronting the daunting challenges facing our nation. Mr. Speaker, today I provided updates to demonstrate that we have delivered on these critical areas. We thank fellow Ghanaians and partners for their invaluable support and sacrifices. Our economy is showing signs of stabilization, and we are deeply grateful for the abiding grace of God, which has been more than sufficient to enable us to turn this corner. By being hopeful, speaking the same language of productivity, growth, and working closely together, we are securing our own collective success. Mr. Speaker, the implementation of ongoing fiscal adjustment and sustained investment in our people have contributed immensely to the stabilization we are seeing in the economy. Exchange rate has stabilized, inflation has softened, and interest rates have declined since 2022, and private investments have been announced due to increased investor confidence in our economy. Ordinarily, these positive trends should ease the burden on our pockets. As a finance minister and a family man myself, I'll continue to work hard to build and sustain a favorable macroeconomic environment and remain confident that the prices of goods and services will reflect the trend for all of us, for all our families and enterprises to enjoy. Mr. Speaker, we must all work together. Regulators, market federations, unions, individuals, and play our part to ensure consumers are treated fairly to complete the turnaround. This mid-year fiscal policy review has outlined a strategy for realigning our program
to sustain our progress to stability. We have not asked, Mr. Speaker, for additional funding. We have not asked for new tax measures. We have committed to stay within appropriation and be even more efficient in mobilizing resources and managing expenditure. Mr. Speaker, we have indicated that we are focused on structural reforms to address systemic weaknesses and strengthen resilience in key areas, including revenue mobilization, expenditure management, commitment control, and arrears clearance, debt management, financial stability, as well as energy and cocoa sector SOE reformation. Rejuvenating the growth agenda of a prioritized growth strategy which emphasizes private sector-led investment in areas such as agriculture, local manufacturing, tourism, and digital transformation. The phase 2 of the Food for Jobs program, aquaculture, YouStart, Economic Enclaves Project, 1D, 1F, and Tech Hubs will be integral to this growth strategy. We will strengthen the ecosystem of financial services to enhance the catalytic role of Development Bank of Ghana, CBG, GCX, GESEL, Ghana SM, GIF, and Venture Capital Trust Fund. Launching the Mutual Prosperity Dialogue Framework to enhance the ease of doing business and crowd in significant private sector, domestic and foreign investment, first from existing companies and also a global search for new entrants. And also, Mr. Speaker, safeguarding social protection for the vulnerable. Mr. Speaker, intermediate results from our collective efforts and our resources, especially our people, indicate that we will indeed succeed. Beyond these current challenges, our economic prospects remain bright, but we must adapt quickly and address unexpected challenges ahead in order to rebuild our resilience. Mr. Speaker, as I conclude, I'd like to bring our attention to several critical imperatives that require our immediate and collective action. The energy sector, especially IPP power payments, remain a critical challenge. We must support the ECG to significantly improve its collection to reduce the burden the sector imposes on public finances. I'm pleased, Mr. Speaker, to announce that we have an updated energy sector recovery plan, and we must all support its implementation to bring the sector towards a sustainable path. Mr. Speaker, expenditure control has become more important to ensure that revenue shocks are efficiently managed, even as we address the systemic challenges through technology and capacity development. Government will work with state institutions to improve the sanctions outlined in the PFM Act, especially regarding off-budget commitments by MDAs. Improving non-oil domestic revenue collection cannot be overemphasized. In this vein, it is important to support the GRA to enhance collection and operationalize measures to strengthen revenue administration effort. To achieve ambitious non-oil revenue target in the PCPEC of 20% revenue to GDP, enhanced commitment is required. And completing the domestic debt operation is essential to restore debt sustainability and move forward our engagement with external creditors. Mr. Speaker, this mid-year review offers us an even better opportunity to jointly work towards entrenching stability for our economy. We must seize it, Mr. Speaker. We must claim now a successful first review of the fund in September. Let us continue, Mr. Speaker, to believe in the Ghana we own. Let us have the courage to be proud about what we can and have achieved. Let us be and think positively. Let us act patriotic and stand firm. With hard work, integrity, fraternity, and mutual respect, we will stabilize and transform our economy as well as build a righteous nation, one of peace, prosperity, and freedom today and into the future. As 1 Peter 1:10 exhorts us, let us use whatever gifts we have received to serve Ghana. As faithful stewards of God's grace, let us indeed
be perfectly united in mind and thought, and build this great republic as in Philippians 4:8. Mr. Speaker, we are all, including myself, Mr. Speaker, including myself, have indeed been battered and bruised and broken in this past year, but we as a country held our resolve. As a resilient nation, the battle has indeed always been the Lord's. As we sit today, let us use this moment to glorify Him, for He has, Mr. Speaker, rescued us. We have seen that He has recovered and restored some of our losses, and He has revived our economy. Mr. Speaker, we need to rejoice in fervent gratitude to the Lord. We must endeavor to continue to build this righteous republic, united in our resolve to transform our economy, for in speaking one language, and nothing will be impossible for us to achieve our manifest destiny of Ghana for greatness. Mr. Speaker, let me once again express my profound appreciation to this House and to all fellow Ghanaians for the support and cooperation towards stabilizing the economy. Let me assure you that the nation, under the steady hands of President Akufo-Addo, will pilot this ship of state, safety and growth. Right Honorable Speaker, thank you for the opportunity to present the Media Fiscal Review Statement to this House, and I beg indeed to submit. May God continue to bless our homeland Ghana, make her great and strong. In Kunim Yeyenga Dia. Victory is ours for all of us together indeed. God bless our homeland Ghana and make it great and strong. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I so submit.
Honorable members, guided by the statement, particularly the business statement for the week, comments on the media review of the budget statement and economic policy of the Government of Ghana for this year will commence tomorrow. Tomorrow, Tuesday, 1st August 2023. I'm informed the intention is for members to use 2 days, tomorrow and tomorrow next, to make comments on the media review. If leadership are minded to say something or to guide me further, please let me know. Yes, Minority Leader.
Mr. Speaker, thank you very much for the opportunity to guide you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, we have listened to our Minister responsible for finance. Mr. Speaker, I listened to him attentively, and I've also had the opportunity to review the papers, the document that he gave to us. Mr. Speaker, he said that the performance so far shows that we have turned the corner. Unfortunately, Mr. Speaker, the evidence and the numbers before us shows that he has rather deepened our woes. Mr. Speaker, I say this because he has said to us today that he is revising economic growth from 2.8% of GDP to 1.5% of GDP. Mr. Speaker, again, he said to us here and now that he has borrowed 5.5 billion Ghana cedis from January to June from the T-bill market. Mr. Speaker, not long ago, this same minister had informed us that he will not borrow at all in the year 2023. And that going into the remaining part of the year, he is going to borrow another 41 billion Ghana cedis. Mr. Speaker, aside that, the cedi depreciation we are seeing so far is largely because he has defaulted in the payment of external interest and principal. Mr. Speaker, that is why
Honorable Leader, I think we will just have to, Leader, I think you are ready to fire on, so we can just start the comments now. We can start the comments now. Leadership, is that what the decision is?
Mr. Speaker, I'm only laying foundation. I'm only laying the foundation for the debate to start tomorrow. Mr. Speaker, I will move for the suspension of the House. But in doing so, let our minister not say this anywhere, that he has turned the corner. He has rather deepened our woes. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Well, I take it that the motion has been moved. Any seconder? Well, that's the motion. I want to listen to leadership before I come to the minister. Minister, let me listen to Majority Leader. Yes.
The minister needed to table the presentation. That is what he just did.
I can't hear you.
I'm saying, after the presentation, the minister needed to table what presentation that he had done to the House, and which is what he just did. And the Speaker,
he needed to do what?
Table the paper.
Table the statement.
The statement that he delivered after the event. He needed to leave the House with a copy. So he needed to lay it, which is what he just did. That's the point. The Speaker, I guess you educate.
Now you are introducing complications. If you are going to lay, is laying it as a paper, as what? Because it's a statement. And he did state that it was a statement in the terms of the Public Financial Management Act. Now, in that situation, do we lay it? Do we table it? If you lay it and you table it, what are the implications? Do we, well, usually statements, we don't lay statements, we don't table them.
The Speaker, this is a very important statement on which we are going to comment. You cannot say that after he has read it, he should put it under his armpit and leave this House. With the greatest respect. He leaves a copy with us for purposes of reference. The Speaker, that is what it is. And that is why I'm saying that after he finished, the next thing was for him to have just presented the paper to us. The Speaker, that's all that I said.
Yes, I heard you, but you know that he did state clearly and call on the Hansard office to capture the entirety of the statement. That becomes public document. And I'm just looking at our practice so that we don't complicate matters. Yes, I see you itching to say something.
Yes, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, even though in the beginning he called on the Hansard office to capture it, where did they go for the records to capture? If he doesn't lay it, there's really no basis for what they are going to capture. Because if you read a copy which some leaders got, it is obvious that he skipped some details. And so he needs to lay what is the original document that he was reading, but skipped some portions and left some details so that the Hansard office can capture the entirety of it. So it's because I do believe that even though it is a statement, that in this instance, he should actually lay the entire document so that it will be part of the records.
I understand the import of that. I'm looking at our practice and procedure. That's what I'm looking at. If it comes under Order 70, it's clear. If it is under Order 74, 75, then we know what to do. You know, those things are stated there. So I don't want people to leave here a bit confused about what next to be done. You want to clarify it? Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, even though you ruled on the fact that this is a statement, I'm just going back to it, given the reference that he's going to lay it, and the question of whether it should be laid or not has risen. Mr. Speaker, I also heard you say we would debate it from tomorrow. We'll make comments. Oh, comments, not debate. Mr. Speaker, I suppose that laying it might not be necessary at all, because when statements are made, and we make comments, I have not seen one statement being made and then it's laid. A statement is made and then we comment on it. Nobody lays a statement. That's my thinking.
Well, yes, there's a deficiency, but we'll correct it. Yes.
Mr. Speaker, this is a statement and it relates to government policy. Mr. Speaker, I thought my honorable colleague and friend, who's been in this house for quite a while, will rather lead us onto the path of righteousness. Mr. Speaker, whenever reviews are made which do not include supplementary budgets, they are laid on the table for us. Mr. Speaker, as my colleague from Oku Central has indicated, it is not possible with such documents to read the entirety of the document. Certainly you may skip some. And if you don't even leave it, assume you even read everything, the Hansard department may not be able to capture everything. For purposes of doubly checking, assuming you even read everything, it's important that we have a copy with us to serve as a benchmark. So, Mr. Speaker, I don't see why we should be litigating this matter. It's by convention and practice. That is what we've been doing, with the greatest respect. But having said so, Mr. Speaker, you asked for an indication. And my colleague, the minority leader, who at the very outset was indulging the finance minister to move a motion outside what is required to be done by the minister, now wants to begin his own debate. Again, outside the arrangement that we have made in this house. He was part of the business committee that agreed that we will stand the debate down, even though it's a statement, for at least 24 hours. For at least 24 hours. And he is trying to construct a very wobbly foundation. That, Mr. Speaker, the indication to you as you sought is that we take a suspension for now. And as we agreed last Friday, maybe for about 30 minutes, and come back to continue with the business of the day. Mr. Speaker, so if he moves a motion, I'm not too sure that he moved a motion because the time is past 2 o'clock. So we just wanted an indication from us. So I want to support the indication that eventually he gave, even though he was on the wrong course at the very outset. Mr. Speaker, the second stage of his submission is what I'm supporting. We take a suspension for 30 minutes and come back. Mr. Speaker, I thank you very much. Honourable members, yes, Honourable Cletus Avoka.
Mr. Speaker, thank you for giving me the opportunity. Mr. Speaker, I think that we should distinguish between the statement that members make on the floor of this House and this mid-year fiscal policy review statement. That being so, this is a very, very official statement in respect of the government's economic policy for the mid-year. I think that for the avoidance of doubt, it will be prudent for us to lay it, so that it will be prudent for us to lay the statement read by the minister, so that members can officially access it and then contribute to the debate. I would prefer that than, not today, I'm not saying today, yes, but I'm raising the issue, I'm contributing to the issue of whether it should be laid or not, and not the other way. So I will prevail upon you, Mr. Speaker, to lay the document, and then it will be assessed by this House so that we can do the debate, rather than treat it like any other statement through this House.
Honourable members used to be moved as motions and debated. That used to be the practice. They used to be moved as motions and debated by the House. 2016, you passed a new law, Public Financial Management Act, which changed the practice, and they are now presented as statements. Now, if you present it as a statement, it comes under Order 72. If you want to lay it, then you have to present it as a paper, and that comes under Order 75. So the procedures are different. And procedure for laying is that sufficient copies shall be submitted to the office of the clerk. On receipt of sufficient copies, the clerk will indicate that it be captured on the order paper. This is what is stated there. And it will have to be laid as papers for presentation. That is at the commencement of public business. But this one came under private business, which is what? Members, including ministers, statements, and that is under Order 72. That is why I said we need to clarify the situation. We are masters of our own rules, and so we are not bound to follow what we have. But definitely there should be some clarity. We should state a good precedent set, and then we can follow it tomorrow. Not to keep on changing whatever we do on this floor. That is why I raise it. Now, the sense of the House is that because of the importance attached to the statement, it should be laid and copies made available to all members, including the office of the General. And so I direct that the Minister for Finance will lay the paper, and then copies will be made available to all members, including the office of the Generals. So, Honourable Minister for Finance, we take it that you have accordingly laid the statement, and copies will be made available to all members. Now, the motion was moved for us to suspend sitting and then come back. So before we do that, I want to, on behalf of all members, thank the Minister for coming to the House, appearing before us, and presenting the media review for the budget and economic policy of government for the 2023 financial year. I should suspend sitting for how long?
Mr. Speaker, I propose 30 minutes. 30 minutes.
Actually, the motion was for suspension. He didn't move for adjournment. He moved for suspension. You mentioned adjournment. Yes.
Mr. Speaker, the agreement was for us to suspend for 30 minutes and for members to be able to ask the ministers some questions that have already been advertised.
So we suspend for 30 minutes.
Only 30 minutes, and then we'll come back. No, members have questions. Ministers. Yes,
Sitting is accordingly suspended for 30 minutes. We want all of you to be back here within 30 minutes for other matters to be considered. There's extended sitting today. We did direct last week that there will be extended sitting from today, and provision for everything is made available. Everything, yes. Honorable members, the House and sitting is accordingly suspended.
Welcome back. This is a coverage of the media budget review here on TV3. We're also live on 3FM 92.7, also live on TV3 Ghana on Facebook, DSTV channel 279, all across the world on 3news.com. We've heard it from the minister. He says no new tax measures, no additional funding. I mean, there was widely, expected, projections, as has been fulfilled, that the minister was not going to be asking for a supplementary budget, which has happened. But then again, the concerns and expectations of industry that COVID-19 levy will be scrapped, the e-levy would also be scrapped. Well, that did not happen. We didn't hear anything to that effect. So subsequently, we'll be seeking the expectation, that's the reactions of industry to the details of this media budget review presented by the finance minister. Also, that there's going to be some engagements with the business community for the 2024 budget, and we'll find out whether really businesses can plan better, as the finance minister said in the presentation of his media budget review. Does the current state of the economy really guarantee businesses the opportunity to plan better? As the finance minister said, we will talk about that as well. And then also, he made reference to the Planting for Food and Jobs. Prior to the presentation, Dr. Charles Nyaba was here, who made reference to the fact that because of the increasing cost of production and inputs, labor, and so on for the agri sector, that is becoming a big problem for them, and we don't expect that the food inflation is going to go down anytime soon if things continue this way. The finance minister didn't give much detail about the reviewed Planting for Food and Jobs program, which we understand is ongoing. So that's something that will also get some reaction from the agri sector as we go on here on TV3 and also on 3FM 92.7 as well. So we will get into a lot more conversations on this. My colleagues are on the ground in Parliament, getting reactions from the members of Parliament about the details of this
media budget review presented by the finance minister. And then also the finance minister made the point that this is an economic program that is to ensure full economic recovery. Is that really a reflection of the situation on the ground? And what has that really got to do with when it comes to the economic projections? For instance, because we're seeing GDP growth rate now reduced from 2.8% to 1.5%. That's a contraction. That's what the finance minister has just presented. What does that mean for you, the individual, you and I watching us, with this GDP contraction from 2.8% to 1.5%? Those are the kinds of conversations that we're going to be having. So stay with us and expect more, especially that we're getting to know as well that government has borrowed some 5.5 billion cedis from the treasury bills market alone. That is debt that you and I will have to pay, right? And at very, very increasingly high interest rates, which a lot of financial analysts have complained about the issues was the sustainability of the cost of the money that government raised on the treasury bills market. So all of these conversations we will be having here on TV3. Make a date with me and the team at 6 p.m. on Business Focus. We would focus on the details of this media budget review, plus some other issues relating to the Bank of Ghana recording losses of some 55.2 billion cedis following the restructuring of government debts, and then also the amount of money the Bank of Ghana is spending on maintenance and foreign travels and so on. That's also generated some conversation as well, which we'll be dealing with on Business Focus. So thank you so much for staying with us here on TV3 and also on 3FM 92.7. On behalf of the rest of the team, we appreciate your company. I am Alfred Okansi. Have a great afternoon.
The rivalry that senior high schools engage in is still present within alumni. The battle for bragging rights to a particular endeavor remains even after school. If your school can cook, it means your school is here. If your school can boast of good culinary masterminds, this right here is the perfect platform to showcase that skill set. Alumni have met, and they have chosen representatives to take up the task of preparing extraordinary dishes to bring victory to their respective schools.
Tell me what you're cooking.
Week in, week out, these schools will mount these workstations in a bid to buy your nutritional affinity to them. Ladies and gentlemen, prepare your taste buds and fasten your aprons. These culinary experts are set to battle for the enviable crown of being tagged Lords of the Kitchen. This is Kitchen Wars Season 2.
Kitchen Wars Season 2, Sundays at 5 p.m. on TV3. Don't miss it.
Sponsored by Gino Tomato Mix
and Napa Foods. Say Napa. Enye Ono Soko.
PGL.
The drama and suspense never ends. Meet Gabriel, who wants to leave the life of crime and turn over a new leaf.
Meet Mary, a powerful but evil matriarch who will leave no stone unturned to serve her own needs. How far is she willing to go? Find out on Isono.
Welcome to the world of the double-faced masquerade, philanthropic socialite in public, yet a cold-hearted criminal running an illegal child trafficking syndicate in private.
Will Gabriel find the strength within him to stand up against Mary? Will Masquerade be found out for the sham she is and arrested? Make a date with Isono and get all the answers.
Catch all the drama, suspense, tension and thrills on Isono each and every Monday to Thursday at 8 p.m. only on TV3.
It wasn't always this easy. When I was 26, I got my first chance to perform a surgery.
Can I have a selfie? Thank you so much.
So I was holding the scalpel. My hands were trembling.
Excuse me, ma'am. Can I have your autograph, please? Sorry, sir.
Yes, go on.
Well then, as soon as the senior surgeon entered